this raw, and then we'll edit
Okay.
and all that, because we'll
So you
want
are
to
on.
intertwine the different
easier if you
conversations
sit
we've had, so,
Okay.
you know.
All right, we are on.
Great. Well, Jim, thanks for joining us today.
My
As
pleasure.
As we've explained to everyone we've talked to so far, as members of the History and Artifacts Committee, we've really ramped up the committee to really capture information and thoughts about the club going back with particularly members that have been in the club for a longer period of time, because like any club, it has evolved over time, and so there's no wrong answer. But what we'd like to get some of your perceptions today. Why don't we start with first of all, when give us a little history of you and the club, when you joined, and how you knew about it, and
Why
this
you
your-
joined it?
why you joined.
Well, this starts out in the middle 70s. I didn't become a regular member until 1983. I put off, I exhausted race memberships, crew memberships, and in the middle 70s I was a carpenter here in town, and I worked for Bob Hadley at Ireland Robinson and Hadley. Bob is a past member here. And on Fridays after work, I would come down here for the Friday night races. And that's when my involvement with the Corinthians started.
Were you a sailor before?
Yeah, I grew up pretty much sailing. El Toros on Lake Merritt, Tomales Bay. I was a junior member of the Sausalito Yacht Club in the late 50s, and really started to learn how to sail on the bay then in Rhodes 19s. And that was a lot of fun. Through high school, those years, I spent a lot of time on bear boats, Smokey the Bear, and that was a lot of fun. One of my best friend's parents owned a boat, and they would just, cut us loose. And in the bay, up the delta, it was a lot of fun. But it really started down here with coming down on for the Friday night races. And, like I say, I became a regular member in 1983, and I became a crew member. We had, do you guys know George Haggett or remember George Haggett?
I certainly do. I
Okay,
certainly
you do?
do.
Yeah,
Yes.
a nor'easter kind of a guy, and he lived on his boat. He was our harbor master. It was a Monterey trawler, and it was right down, berthed by the gate down here. So he would always see me coming into the club. And back then, the gate's actually locked. So if you wanted to get in here, you had to hop the fence. And George caught me quite a few times, and finally he got fed up with it and hauled me up here, and I mean, he came up to probably, here on me, but I mean, he was George. And
Dirty George.
he was quite a guy. So he hauls me in upstairs, telling me what a problem I am. I'm a liability problem. And he's reading me the riot act, and as we walk in, there's a couple of guys in the bar, and they go, "George, what's happening here?" And he says, and basically told him I was a problem. And this was Warren Vincent and George Horsfall,
Oh,
who
okay.
later they were my sponsors, and they just went, well, "It's not a problem. We'll just make him a member." And they signed me up. I was a crew member. There was no initiation fee. My dues were $20 a month, and I got a club charge and a gate card for the parking lot. I was in total heaven.
No interviews, no posting?
No, nothing like that. They just.
And this was in
I'm thinking this is 1978.
78 as a crew member.
Yeah, because I believe that went for 2 years, and race was maybe 3, and then Tim Jones, who was active with our membership committee back there, basically told me, it's time to toe the line, Jim, and you need to join. So, still being a carpenter, young, no money, was $1,200, and so they billed me $100 a month for a year, and that's how I became a member.
So that was your initiation fee as
Yeah.
a regular member?
That's right.
Okay.
That's how I
Okay.
came to be here. But basically, right out of the gates, I was a liability problem. And being a Cal 20 sailor these days, I still exercise my rights. I figure I have a small boat with a big rating, and it's my job to get in your way.
What's interesting, you came up the ranks with the small boats, and your affinity for the small boat hasn't changed.
That's true, Tom. I've small boats and going up to big boats. I've done a lot of one design sailing, J105s, NARS, Express 27s, mostly bay racing, some coastal. Catalina race, I've done Monterey a few times. We tried to go to Hawaii once for the Transpac, but we got about 2/3 of the way out and the boat broke, so we came back.
That was with Jim Gibbs?
Right, Jim Gibbs, Ron Kell, Jim Tull,
Peter,
and Jim's son Matt.
And
We
Peter.
were,
I think Peter was meant to be there.
and was an Olsen 40. Nice boat. And we had done due diligence and had the fittings x-rayed and stuff, but we were just getting ready to really figure out how we were going to hit the Molokai Channel, and the forestay broke up at the top of the mast. So we decided not to risk it.
I guess what begs the question, if you were 2/3 of the way there, why didn't you finish the final third rather than you still had, if you're 2/3 of the way there, you had 2/3 of the way to get back. How are you able to get back?
Well, we motored a lot, and we jury rigged with extra halyards to take up the not having a forestay. But the reason we really didn't want to go forth is that when you're approaching Hawaii and to hit the Molokai Channel, it's like a vortex. All of a sudden the wind will pick anywhere from 10 to 20 knots, and the pressure increases. And also we were on a chartered boat. The deductible for the mast was $10,000. So we figured we'd just let it go. We ate well. And,
Good call.
and we had plenty of provisions, and we decided it was best to just come back intact and not push it. So yeah, we had a vote down below, and that's what we decided.
How many in the crew?
5, I think, I believe. Yeah, right.
Yeah, I think I remember a lot of conversations because, as I said, Peter was meant to be on the crew, but he never signed on. And so we had a lot of meetings with Jim Gibbs because that was his, was it 50th birthday wish? There was something, the reason why he did that.
Well, we had all had thought about doing the Transpac, all of us that were involved with that. Ron Kell, Jim Tull, and it was a lot of fun. It's too bad we weren't able to complete that one. So most of my experience is really in the bay, in small boats going on up to big boats. I think my big boat fun time was sailing with Cy Kleinman on Swiftsure, and that's a Freres 58. This is the old Swiftsure, built like a tank. And to go around the buoys, we had a crew of 22 people. And
Wow.
everybody had their specific job. And I walked up to the boat and I said, I'd like to crew. And they said, well, what can you do? I said, I'm a trimmer. And, I had no idea how to trim something that big, but essentially all boats are the same. They are. And you just adapt and learn, and did a couple of big boat series with him and some buoy racing, some short hops to Monterey. Never went as far as Santa Barbara in it, but some short hops, Farallon races. And it was just great to be part of Cy Kleinman's sailing program. He was a true gentleman of the sport. And I mean, the big boat series, he would, you had a crew shirt, you know, when you're working on the boat, yellow with red letters, Swift Shore. His moniker was A Touch of Class. And then if you were to go into the club, you changed gears and you wore a polo shirt that had a collar on it, and of course all of the Touch of Class and the flags and everything right here. And he would always, and every big boat spirit, he'd have a dinner for us, and it was.
So you really felt like you were on a team.
You definitely,
Yeah,
Tom.
yeah, that's great.
Yeah,
That's great.
He would host a dinner in the chart room for us, and there'd be like 50 people. True, great guy.
So we're on the eve of the 2019 midwinter races, and I'm curious as to how the racing climate at the Corinthian Yacht Club compares today to what it was when you first joined the club. Has it changed? Has it evolved? Is it much the same?
It's changed. We don't have near the racers here today that we did in the middle 70s. One of the biggest things is that when you look out at the harbor now, easily half of it's motorboats.
Yeah.
And back then it was A-line. There were ketches, schooners, large boats, big swans. You go down BC line, and there'd be a row of 7 or 8 NARs, and there was just a lot more activity, sailing and racing wise, back then, and how I don't know why really offhand why things have changed. People's interest. I mean, sailing is a commitment. We're talking about seamanship, boat handling, and then you get into the whole race area, and it's a commitment. And I don't think that we see as many people these days that have the time to make it a priority, and that's why I think that there's declining numbers. It's just kind of the way things are going now.
Yeah. Fielding a team and making it's commitment on their part as well, and that makes it rather difficult. What about the balance between the social aspect of this club and the racing aspect? Have you seen that change, or we've always been a fairly social club, but that could be a lot of racers that are also social. How do you see it now? How does it compare now?
Well, I believe sailors are social, but right now I'm used to our club being like right in the neighborhood of say 350 to 375 regular members. I think we're cooking up around 500 right now, and a lot of our members don't have boats, but they like being on or near the water. You don't necessarily have to be a racer or an active boater to be part of the Corinthian Yacht Club. We're a little bit. All of the clubs on the bay have their niche, and they're a little different. San Francisco has San Francisco Yacht Club is much larger, and the St. Francis is international. You go over to the Richmond Yacht Club, and they're like a volunteer motivated outfit. We've here, you know, and it's like people that want to partake or to promote the sailing programs, they're not there like they used to be, okay? I don't know how else to really phrase that. But for example, our race committee, we had people, I came along with people that were really into the Yacht Racing Association of San Francisco Bay. There used to not be a YRA, and then it came into play. Fellows like Roger Eldridge over at San Francisco Yacht Club, these guys, Bob Thalman here. I got to talk about Bob. Bob's been one of my mentors all along, organizing YRA as a focal point of how our races go here on the bay. They had programs for race management, so that people would be qualified to run races. Also appeals, protest stuff. We had a lot of people involved in that. Easily, like, I would say 25 or 30 people were directly involved year-round in organizing and running our sailing program. We don't have that now. So we need to cut back. When I first started out doing it, because I was a racer and I was brought into the racing situation where if you race, you give back. You go back and you do race committee work. You know, our skippers would volunteer us to be on their on the race committees, and that's where it all started. And I don't think that you don't see too much of that anymore.
Do you miss that?
No, because I've done it a lot.
Right.
But do you miss seeing that in the club?
I miss seeing that. Yes. When I'm out on the course area, I really appreciate a well-run race, knowing that I'm in the hands of somebody that knows what courses to call, makes adjustments in a timely fashion depending upon wind changing and things like that. When you see, and good radio work, good communication is critical.
You know, that's something we might want to consider. First of all, obviously the purpose of the History and Artifacts Committee is to not only identify the legacy, but make sure that legacy continues. And we certainly have a lot of people that have expertise in those various areas that you've talked about that, you know, we might want to consider at some point making classes available for people that want to learn that. Because we certainly have the talent pool here that can teach that. So I think that's a very good point. Periodically, I'm a much newer member than certainly you and Yuta and Mike. So periodically, I just sort of walk through the halls here and look at what we've got on the wall and pictures. And Yuta pointed out, you know, your picture's on the wall for a reason. You want to talk a little bit about that?
I always figured I'm on the wall because it was political.
We're not talking about the post office.
No, tell us about, I mean, your picture on the wall. I mean, you were the first of the pictures of the wall. When we
1993.
Yeah. Did you know, how did this, or did you know how the Sailor of the Year, how that came about?
No, I remember that night pretty well because it was the first time I had been to an annual meeting in a long time where I didn't have to sit up front and I didn't have to speak. So I was having a few drinks. And sitting in the back of the room, and Jim Gibbs was talking about, I didn't know he was talking about me. I mean, I wasn't even listening. And finally, like after he was about maybe 3/4 of the way through his presentation for Sailor of the Year, people were going, you know, they're talking about you, Jim. What? And there you go.
But you became the first Sailor of the Year.
Right.
Yeah.
And it was the Sailor of the Year. It's not only just about sailing. It's being involved with our water programs. And in the 70s, 80s, and the 90s, we had an active youth program. We had racers. You know, we had probably at least you had 20 people that would race on a regular basis.
Yes, yes.
I mean, we have 80 boats in the harbor, but everybody used their boats, and we had a pretty active cruising program too, where we would get folks together and, like, you know, we were saying, we're pretty social, and we go and visit the other clubs, and we, of course, reciprocate, and we have them here for cruise-ins.
But I also think, you know, we have to remember when we're talking about 70s, 80s. It's sort of the same group, and we are all becoming older. And some of the members who were the great racers, you know, were older than I was, and so they would stop the racing and switch to a power boat. And you know, I'm sure you can think back of many of our members who were hotshot racers,
Right.
who just, you know, we just ran out.
It's physically demanding, and you got to pace yourself. But you know, all people that go out on the water, racers and stuff, it's because they like being out on the water. They love it. It's a main part of their life. And you know, if you need a motor to get you out there and about, I'm all for it. You know, it's kind of like a natural, the evolution of things, of aging. Okay.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean the Sailor of the Year in 1993, we were pretty much in a money crunch back then. Okay.
Big time.
This is when Corinthian Catering came into play, and we cut loose a general manager that was very proactive for water programs, and we brought somebody in that was going to be, you know, get the catering business up and going, and I that was like a financial decision, and you know, you go with the flow. I didn't like it, and that anyway, you know, that's like I say, it was like the club survival. We have a lovely old building here, and it takes a lot of care and maintenance and expense, and we don't have that big of a membership base.
Right.
So we needed to develop that, but that's why I was sitting in the back, and I didn't have anything to do that night, because like this was I wasn't going to be rear commodore. I wasn't going to be race chairman, and actually I was still race chairman. I'm thinking about it. I've been rear commodore twice. I've been I've been port captain a couple of times, and vice. And then we all came to the conclusion it was probably best that I stay at where I'm good, and let because it's a financial thing to keep things going smooth around here.
Yeah.
It really is changing times.
You're running a business. Yeah.
We're going through another phase right now, and I'm confident that we're going to do just fine.
You know what I think what will be helpful for our viewers too is you've been quite active I know on the port committee, and in the whole matters having to do with the port, talk about that a little bit, so people sort of understand what that role is and why it's so important to the overall health of the club.
The port committee is maintenance and also facility planning, okay? And this comes into like our general plans for remodeling, keeping the club up to speed with health regulations, building codes. Our present committee, I'm on the committee, I'm a general building contractor, and I've done a lot of renovations and remodeling, and I'm totally, if I have a specialty, it's with historically significant buildings, and this
great.
one
Oh.
actually qualifies, and I'm right in that niche. And so I spend, well, a lot of my play comes in with retrofitting, repairs, seismic upgrades. The other members on there, we have architects. Everybody on the port committee has some kind of a license. And general contractors, engineers.
Design.
Yep,
Yeah.
that's right. And so what we do is like we take care of this building. That's our job.
Has this building, I should know this, but I don't, has this building been established as a designated, historic building, do you know?
Tom, I don't know. I don't think it has.
Mm-hmm.
Historically significant building.
If that ever happens, it makes what you're saying all the more
Well,
important.
it's like, I think that this is a possibility. We do need to retain the character of the building. Our Corinthian facade out here, the columns, the plinths. The only building I can think of right around here locally that has is I think the St. Hilary's Church is a historically significant. The China House over here, next, and I think they're hooked up with the Cove Foundation.
Oh, okay.
But I'm not real certain about that.
I don't think we are. We are not on the
No.
historical registry.
I think this is a good point to kind of explore, all right? Because if you're a historically significant building, there's advantages, tax-wise, okay? That comes into play. I worked on this place and this is just an aside, a historically significant house. It was called the Hale House. And it was built in 1905. And I was there with the new owners, and we were bringing it up to the current codes. But what came into what I found really interesting is that I found that I was dealing more with the historical society as opposed to the building department. The historical society, when it comes to a historically significant building, runs the building department. Those are the people that you take care of. Okay, if I'd have groups come through, like it was, like they're just having fun and going on a tour. No, this is like an inspection, and that's the way I looked at it. And it was a lot of fun. Great project. I had great clients, and but it's like you can when you start trying to bring your building up to current codes, it's just gotten a little more complicated over the years. The American Disabilities Act comes into play. We have to be careful about that. So that's why I enjoy being on port committee, and actually I spend most of my time on the lower deck. I'm underneath the building, but I'm pretty aware and cognizant of what's happening up here too, particularly like with our our plan that we have in place now with redoing our kitchen. And this is, redoing our kitchen is to, so that we can take better care of our members, but also it's how we generate money. You know, it has how we keep things going upstairs.
Right.
Keep it smooth, keep it up to date.
So Jim, did you now you're on the port committee, and sort of in the olden days there were the Pelicans. Were you one of the Pelicans?
I was involved with those
You were
guys.
involved, yeah.
Sure.
Tell us
Howard
a little bit
Folker,
about-
the DeMartini brothers, Charlie White, John Culver, Bob Thalman, all these guys were in there.
So tell us a little bit about kind of, you know, now there's the port committee and you're all licensed, you all have a role. The Pelicans, their role, and what did they do? I mean, I know what they did, but to what extent?
They worked with the port committee and the port captain. And they were like, I don't know, in what, I'm not sure if this is the right term, but they were like lobbyists, okay? And what they cared about was, you know, the club, the harbor. And it all kind of went together then too. There wasn't quite the separation that we see today. Harbor committee, port committee, you know. But we're really all the same. And these guys, aforementioned fellows, they were all, they were general contractors or in some way or another affiliated with the building trades.
Did they actually put together crews to do some of the work themselves?
Yes, yes they did.
So they had elbow grease in the game.
They did. For the most part, they were like foremen or supervisors. But when they were younger, they would get out there and actually do physical work.
Wasn't that in a time too where the club didn't have that much money, so
No.
it became the Pelicans or whoever they got involved to actually to do the work.
That's right. Volunteers,
Yeah.
that was it. And, you know, we still have that to a certain extent. I volunteered quite a bit. I'm about ready to open up holes downstairs for a new bottle filling station.
Yes.
And,
We talked about this.
and that's, that's right, right. And, you know, it's, you know, there's a group there, you know, like on, say for example, the present port committee, there's a group on there that, you know, says, well, you know, hose bib works fine for me, I should, you know, and there's a water fountain already down there. But there's a thing too of like, in how we want to be seen or perceived with people that come through. Whether they're members of other clubs, members of our club, or they're guests for some sort of a private event that you know, that we're the host. So it's important. I mean, down to signage, you know, proper signage. You know, it's not. You don't want to have to walk up to the bottle filling station and you go, "What's this?" and you see a little red button and push it, and you know, you get squirted or something. But, so it's a lot of fun, and you do. Like I say, you volunteer. The plumbers have to be paid, the electricians have to be paid, you know, but you're just doing it.
Right.
That's part of our deal.
If someone is a member and has what they think is a good idea, something that might be a benefit to the club, how does that message get to the port committee?
How does that get to the port committee? Well, first, I think they would talk to members of the port committee, and then, you know, if they felt that the members of the port committee thought that was a good idea, then you would put it in the form of a proposal and take it to the port committee. And then you could take the port committees, take that and then go to the board and see. It could also happen the other way around, where that member could take their proposal or their idea and go directly to the board. Any member is always welcome to attend a board meeting or any committee meeting. It's wide open.
Yeah.
It's not like, a society that's closed. Everybody is always welcome.
I think to that point too, I think, all of us at some time or another spend time in the bar. It's sort of the liquor license is sort of the holy grail to any club. And so I guess it's not a bad idea if you know someone that's on one of the committees and you have an idea, informally discuss it. That we're not so formal as that you've got to write up a proposal and then get a slot at the next committee
More
meeting.
often than not, Tom, that's how things
get
start.
done.
And then, you go to the next port committee meeting, I might go, Greg, listen to this. Greg Quilici, who is our port captain. But what do you think about this? And it'll get tossed around. When I say by tossed around, Greg has decades experience in construction, and other people have their special areas. Some general contractors in there are like asbestos and hazardous waste people. Others, like our architects, have, their expertise is knowing what's going on with the American Disabilities Act and current health regulations. So you take these ideas and you toss them around and see what everybody else has to say, and you fine tune it.
Right.
And then see what everybody thinks. If they think it's a bunch of crap, we'll just tell the guy it's a bunch of crap.
Yes.
Sorry.
Right.
It can be very informal, but it does get listened to. All opinions are valued, and you leave yourself open to it. I like seeing people work together.
Right. Well, that's one of the reasons why I asked the question, because I think, for our newer members coming in, you don't necessarily have to be here 10 years before you can serve on a committee, whether it's port or whether it's other committees. So I would hope that just from explaining how the port committee works and people getting familiar with other committees that we have here, to step up and volunteer to get involved, because that's, again, part of maintaining the legacy is getting new blood in and people that have gone to the trouble of joining, getting more involved in some of these other areas that will only benefit the club.
So along that line, now you go back and you have seen changes. Before we finish all of this, I would like to hear, you were saying the annual meeting, you were sitting up front and now you're sitting in the back. So looking at, my question is twofold. So one question is, how do you look at the annual meetings back then versus now? And how do you look at the club, where we are now going back? So where do you see the club moving forward? I mean, like the next 20 years. What do you think is happening the next 20 years?
Wow, that's a lot.
That's a lot. Yeah, I know, it's a loaded question. First, the annual meeting.
Well, the annual meetings in the 70s, 80s, and stuff, they were a lot livelier than they are now. Everything, the reports were not available prior. Everybody had their concerns. Where should the money go? What's the priority? And we had a lot of people, there was a lot of passion. Most of the passion actually happened in the bar, but upstairs people were, they might yell, they might be out of order, but everybody listened. So it was a lot livelier the meetings that I've been used to going here
Lately.
in the 2000s, okay? Reports go out beforehand. I don't know if it's such a good idea. I like the livelier ones where people would just get up and say what they thought. And
And
it just seemed to be a lot more wide open. Right now, it's like the annual meeting to me is, it's almost like a kind of a rubber stamp deal. Here we have all our reports and stuff prior, and it's like everybody is there just to kind of congratulate everybody else. And I think that's okay, but to an extent, I want to know what's happening with the club. I don't care if somebody did
Right.
a good job or this or that. I want to know the specifics.
Yeah.
The annual meeting to me is a business meeting, and it's no longer really like that. It's I don't even really like saying this with that camera on me, but the Mutual Gratification Society, I'm not into that.
Patting each other on the
Patting each other on the back, Tom. I don't do what I do to be patted on the back. I do it because I like being on the water, and this has been just a great place to hang my hat for close to 40 years.
Right, and there's so many moving parts. We know that some of them have to squeak, and that's
Yes.
what you want to know. Where
Yes.
where are they squeaking? What can we do better?
And it goes back to, it's like, it doesn't matter if I agree with somebody that's, really, maybe taking too much time to get their point across. Be patient, sit back, listen, and see where it goes.
I mean, I totally agree with you. You said it
yeah,
very well.
I would like us to steer back towards, the annual meetings, format and procedure, to have it be more like a business meeting. Like we're voting on the flag. We're voting on the board of directors. We've had years here where we've had alternative slates come into play, and they actually upset what the nominating committee came up with. That was a wild night. It was, and I was a pretty young member back then too, but it was, I was involved, because I think at that time, when all that alternative slate came around, I was the race chairman.
Yeah,
Pretty sure.
I can't.
This was after George Horsfall left us.
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Skip Cronell was the alternative slate guy. And Skip asked me if I would be the race chairman. And I knew pretty well what that meant. Race chairman, I had a lot of people on my race committee back then. We're smaller there. Maybe I'm getting off track, but the rear, also our rear convoy needs, as far as I'm concerned, is a good race chairman, and everything else falls into place. The cruising community, they kind of run stuff. We don't have a youth program. I wish we did, but or had stronger ties with the youth programs that are going. We have a lot of members now that were new members that have kids. It's going to come into play. That's going to be part of the future
That's
here,
the future,
to get
yes.
off to the other end of your question, Yuta.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
They're the ones that are going to make it go.
Yeah, I think you're right, and the demographics in terms of age demographics are such that it's getting teed up, I think, and then someone needs to run it. Someone needs to be the driver, I think, for that. But
Yuta, did I stray too far there? If I pretty much answered your question,
Yeah.
what the meetings were like
Yeah,
then
yeah.
as opposed to
No,
now,
I mean,
and where we're going, I'm kind of starting to stretch off there.
no,
But,
I think the meetings is, I mean, I remember the meetings, and I mean, you're absolutely right in what you're saying. Now it's becoming much more, read it. If you have any questions, fine, let's go to the bar. I mean, basically. I think back then, what you remember more the business that each committee had was actually presenting their
Correct.
presentation. It wasn't just the.
Thank you, I'm
Yeah.
the head of the committee, I had these people working for me and they did this and they did that. And it's like objectives that were met or not met, that was brought up. And you would just kind of move on from there. You were thankful for the people that were there, but it wasn't, it wasn't the real reason we were there is to just say hi to everybody. We do that downstairs in the bar. You go upstairs and you take care of business.
What's been accomplished, what's not been accomplished, what our goals are for the coming year.
Yeah. And people would stand up and go, I don't like where this is going, and you're not getting my vote because I think this is money ill spent.
Right,
And there you go. You'd have a nice discussion.
right.
And hammer it out.
Yeah.
So I'd like to see that. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. I'll just keep, like race committee, there's we have a lot more committees now than we used to have. Lots more.
Right.
There's a place for everybody around here.
Right.
But I enjoy Port Committee because I feel I can be of service to the club. I'm on the race council because I don't want to see us just take a total back seat in promoting sailing and racing. I feel that that's real important. That's where we're at. This goes back to our old history, 1886.
Yep.
Right.
In the formation of the three clubs,
Yep.
San Francisco, the Corinthian, and we had this plate across there, because that got split up. The St. Francis, I don't think, came about actually until like maybe 1917 or
Yeah, I can't
maybe
remember.
even.
I can't
I'm a little
remember.
fuzzy on that one,
But they're still reminded today that the name San Francisco Yacht Club was already taken.
that's right. That's right.
So in terms of, back to Port Committee for a moment, because you guys do really oversee, the whole physical structure and what goes on in the port and all that. What do you see as some of the bigger challenges ahead? Obviously, a lot of the slips were built for boats that were designed differently, and that's certainly one area, but I'm sure it's just one of numerous concerns.
It is a concern, a major concern, especially as we move forward and time goes by. I see us to be Port Committee needs to interact with our harbor people, which is kind of kept as a different entity. The harbor company, and I'm not quite sure actually how all of that comes under the CYC umbrella. The port, we take care of the building in the parking lot. The harbor, they're in charge of the breakwater and the slips, the fingers, and the docks, and everything that goes on out there. And
It would seem you'd almost be connected at the hip,
right,
wouldn't you?
and I think they are really, okay, even though they operate a little differently. I recently got into a thing. I'm on race council too. We have a couple of Club Cal 20s down there, and this is to kind of we bought them, and they're club boats, and we want to make them more available to everybody. And I got into it with the harbor guys because they parked them over here by the breakwater. Nobody sees them. Nobody even knows they're there. And I wanted to put them, you know, in like when you first walk into the gate right along the dock there. Well, they weren't going to just give it to me. They wanted to rent it to me. And boy, that started stuff going. I'm going, why should I pay for our club boat have to pay?
Right.
This is the club.
Yeah, it's a
You're,
resource.
you're not just the harbor company. You're the club.
Right.
So I would like to see the club, you know, like port and harbor mesh a little bit more. Okay, I think that would be a good liaison that would benefit the Corinthian Yacht Club overall. Okay, and wow, climate change and all of that's coming into play. We need to be ever watchful about our breakwater. There's some, you know, also like there's some a whole finger over here that's where the pilings are there. We own the land, but if you let it go, we're not going to be able to get it back. We wouldn't be able to develop it. It'd be a great spot to have for small boats, for example.
I think that's something that
Kayaks,
is-
paddle
yeah.
boards, dinghies, skiffs, stuff
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
And it would be real visual, real close, and I think the only thing you really have to look out for is you'd have to be careful with the kids. I'm thinking of the kids going in and out. Don't get smacked by a ferry boat. You know, don't insult the people on Sam's deck. Stuff like that. I mean, they're kids.
Right,
And,
right.
But that's something that has been talked about.
It has been
Long,
talked
long,
about,
long time.
and I would
And,
like to. I think that would be a good thing to jump on and hear what some people, you know, ideas. It's going to cost money because you have to do pilings.
Sure.
And there's ways that you can repair pilings where you're not, you know, changing anything. You know, you take an old rotten piece of wood, you encapsulate it, you fill it up with concrete and steel, and you have something that you can tag a float onto or a finger. Preserve what we have. We wouldn't want to lose that over there.
No,
No.
So that would be one that I would like to see go. But that's outside of my scope of port committee. Excuse me, Tom. I didn't mean
No,
to
but
digress and go off on you.
that's okay. Again, you made one very important point, irrespective of whether we're on the history and artifacts committee or you're on port committee. The thing we all have in common is we're members.
That's right.
And we're a community of one in terms of how we should be viewing this club.
There's a common bond here, and it's the bay. For whatever reason, that's the deal.
but I think what Tom was just the word, the history. I think this is very important that we preserve our history. I mean, when you think about what we are, the Club 1886, you think about what has happened in sort of the world or around here, 1886, and we're still standing, we're here. I think we have so much to preserve, and that it's sort of our responsibility to preserve it.
Absolutely.
For the future
And
generations.
And along that line, you should be aware, and our members will be as we become more visible. Mike has procured, with Michael Morazza's help, a digital version of the Centennial book that came out in 1986. And we're going to reproduce that and make it available to new members or existing members. And that has quite a lot of what we're talking about in it.
That's great.
And that's going to be something that I think spawns.
I still have my 1986 Centennial T-shirt.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
it's
Yeah, I mean,
vintage.
don't you agree that it's something that we have to
I do.
be aware of now,
I
that
do.
what we have, it will never come back.
No.
So we have to preserve and then build on it as we move forward.
It's sort of, to put it, use a sort of a metaphor of what you do when you go into an old house. You want to make sure they don't put a carpet down on a parquet floor or paint over the marble fireplace.
That's right.
You know, that's really important, and we have all of this here. It can't be replicated, and you know, when we do things to it, like when we just did a paint job, you know, in the Corinthian facade there, it didn't change anything. You can
Correct.
still, when you're coming down the hill in Divisadero and look straight across, you see this.
That's right.
Yeah.
It's preserved.
Yeah.
And digitalize our history and stuff. I think this is a great way to do it, because space is a tough one. It's like where can we display things? You know, and to have this goes back to computers and stuff, Mike. You know, being able to, you know, have it on our Corinthian Yacht Club homepage, and it should be a very prominent part of that. But also, there's some physical things that just you need to see. I mean, one of the things that I've always enjoyed seeing, going through the old charts and plans here, is how they had the cove out here laid out. I mean, they actually had streets planned for out here. It's pretty neat. And then it also how like we sit right on the borderline between Belvedere and Tiburon. We get to play with both of these departments. And
This side is Belvedere, you're in Tiburon.
yeah,
Right.
It's
Right.
pretty interesting. You know, and I think that some things should go up on the wall. That's you know, you just
We need
can't
to rotate this stuff.
You can't digitalize
Right.
everything.
Everything.
You need
No,
to be
no,
able
no.
to see it.
The trophies.
Well, as you know, we're having discussions with the port committee to try to identify somewhere where we can house our
I'm aware of
archive.
that. Yeah.
And certainly, my sense is that the port committee very much supports what we're trying to do. The key issue is finding space that works, and that may be a couple of different spaces at different times based upon how it fits into, you know, construction and things that are in the plan. But it's comforting to know that we're on your radar, and that makes us feel
Definitely.
good.
Talk about the Corinthian women. The Corinthian women.
In the
Yeah.
sense of,
You always ask everybody.
no,
What's that?
About the Corinthian women and your memories of it starting.
The Corinthian women were really they came into the forefront with their sailing programs and promoting women in sailing, and that's evolved into quite a program. Every year, how many Yuta are we talking? Like 100?
no,
100
far as
students?
now they 40, 50, 60.
Okay.
It's, yeah, not 100.
Because they have to tie it into the number of boats they can
Yeah.
secure and all of that to get out on the water. And
Well, you kind of caught me a little bit, because the Corinthian women are a force now here at the Corinthian Yacht Club. I think it might be noted that I don't even believe that women were allowed to vote at the Corinthian Yacht Club until like the early or middle 70s.
In the mid 70s, yeah.
Am I right?
Yeah, mid 70s.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I mean the Corinthian women.
And now, I mean, the Corinthian women run our store. They're involved with the sailing program. They generate money, and they feed this back to the Corinthian Yacht Club. I've seen it happen, you know, like our shore boats were purchased by the Corinthian women.
The furnitures and
The furniture,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's pretty neat.
But that's I mean,
And that goes
that
back to,
was the women's auxiliary, and then they became the Corinthian women.
you were a forerunner there along with Roz Culver.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And in the sailing aspect of it, Kay Rudiger was involved
She
in
was
the old
involved,
days.
Yeah.
And
So, I mean,
Kay was
it-
one of my old boat partners there for a while,
Yeah,
in one
that's
of my
right.
first Cal 20s.
Remember that?
Yeah.
Remember that?
Yeah, we had a nice conversation with Yuta and Roz where we talked about that, and also included in the archives will be some, some photos and other memorabilia that tie into that particular area. So that's the importance of the archive. However much space, and it probably will be less than more because we only have so much to work with, but to be able to have a place where members can go and look at some of these artifacts. We're also going through, we have a tremendous amount of photos and stuff in our archives that hasn't been attended to, and taking a look at that, and so I think it will become even more evident as you see the product of our labor, these videos that we do and put
You're
I
gonna,
think-
you're gonna see this happen, Tom.
Mhm.
It might not happen as quickly as we would like, but a place, a physical spot. We talk about, we become more of a social club than known as a sailing club. Like the lockers downstairs, I mean, in the old days, these were basically apartments.
Yeah.
Okay, and then some of them stayed big, particularly the ones here on our southern face. As you walk into what we call Pneumonia Alley, everything off to the left, okay?
Right.
And we have a new general plan. Part of this is to increase, the general plan is to increase the efficiency of the kitchen and to also to be able to take care of an increased staff. We're losing our lockers downstairs. I was one of them, but anyway. And some of this is still up in the air, and I don't know if it'll come into play, but I have a vision here of like, you start at the double doors where you walk in, and you see where the tile's laid down there. I'd like to go all the way back to where that tile ends, and I want to open up that whole zone. I would like to see one big room, and this would be a multi-use room. This would have wall space. This would, it would be a place where the children can enjoy themselves. It would be a place where we could have meetings, or it's a multi-purpose room. It's space, and that's what we need is space, and it would be accessible. It's right next to the bathrooms.
And to that point, by the way, those heads are a good example of how you can take some very, very old space and make it look quite nice and practical. And that's sort of the whole
The
idea.
notion that we have to have, like the people that are renting the lockers have to have their lockers, that doesn't fly anymore, it really. And this is maybe where the harbor company can help us out too, with like storage, and they have been, storage boxes out on the
Right.
Dogs,
deck.
yeah.
Of the docks.
And I think also, and I don't know who is in charge of that, but it has been amazing to realize actually some of our members who have lockers, who has not had a boat for years and years, and why are you having a locker? But anyway, stuff like that.
It's a real political football
is,
there,
it
isn't
is.
it, Yuta?
Yeah.
Okay, so just eliminate them and let's have a big multi-purpose room where we can have kids,
Where am I gonna put all those extra sails? My thing is stacked to the brim.
Yeah.
I can't even get to the bar by the window. I have so many sails in there.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm not kidding.
okay.
Yeah.
Well, you
But-
better get rid of all those old sails. Keep a good set on the boat and have a backup.
I have 6 backups.
I just, to me, said, you know, sails are horsepower, you know, good sails are horsepower, so I've always been, yeah, I had like 3, 4 sets, and so what I did was I sold them to the club, and now they're on the club boats, and now our club boats are competitive.
Yeah, that
I
make-
mean,
that
because
makes
they're
sense.
not, well, they're
That makes a lot
not,
of
they're not
sense.
like top notch for like one design
No,
racing and
no.
going for like fleet championships and stuff like that. But they are perfectly good for club sailing programs. They're competitive. But the end run is I don't need as much space as I thought.
Yeah.
Okay, and I might even have to change gears there if I think, you know, like some of the lockers will stay and some are going to go. But the ones that are what it comes down to, there's going to be a sacrifice there if you lose all of those lockers right up in there. But it's multi-use.
So it's a sacrifice for the better good of the club. And
That's the way I see it,
yeah,
Tom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But when you say, I can see a multi-purpose
Sure.
room, big room, I can see
This
that.
would be a place for our archives, you know, and we can move things around. There's lots of ways that you can present and make it visible.
Right.
And still-
Roll around partitions,
Okay.
you know,
I
it's
was going-
flexibility.
Yeah, I was going to say, some partition, because I think if you think of an archive and you have valuable to all of us, items in that archive, you don't want a bunch of kids coming in and flipping through books and, tearing them apart
No, you
and
can't
stuff
have it
like
like
that.
a library. It has to be preserved
It
and
has to
protected.
be protected, yes.
Yeah.
What I want to say and to you too is, it has been interesting, the club members that we have had conversation with, a lot has brought little items down, and I think what we are realizing is that a lot of our members, we have club items at home or historical items at home that we are keeping at home. I'm saying we because we have a few, because bringing them down here, you are afraid that they're going to get lost or they're going to get ruined. I think if we have proper space,
Right.
we'll be amazed how much is actually coming from our members, our long-term members, who have memorabilia from events that has been going on, which would be interesting to have
It
them
would.
in the club
Yeah.
rather
It
than
Yeah.
we are all passing away and then they go to, I don't know.
And I think we have within the club some people that wouldn't mind taking on the responsibility of sort of, being like the curator. Will help them
Yeah.
in terms of content, but in terms of just keeping track of it and making sure that if someone wants to lend something to the club, to be seeing that they can get it back.
That's
So-
right.
So that's
We're in that direction.
we very very much
in
so.
the process of, like, we're in the early 90s, like we had a big change of gears there. Okay, we knew that we needed to generate more money. The current CCI came into effect, and now that it's a success, we need to step forward once again here in 2017, 2018, and going into up to 2020 actually. And upgrade and step forward.
Well,
And
and
for the better of the good, I like I'm promoting opening up the downstairs, and but at the same time, it's like I know that we need places to put sails and but there's things that we can do. You just need to be creative with your space.
I know that's primarily what you guys are talking about now in terms of how we execute that
Yeah,
and use it. So we've taken about an hour or so here, and it's this kind of exchange that really helps a lot, and you'll be able to see what we did today next week. Mike gets it loaded, and you'll get and you'll also be able to take a look.
I'll send you a link and you get to see all the others.
You'll see all the
Thank
other
you.
all
Thank
the
you,
others.
that'd be great.
And then pretty soon, we just wanted to get enough content. Then we're going to start the process of editing and cobbling it together. I know Shelley would like to have Will during one of the speaker series to come in, and a lot of what we're doing here I think will be part of that presentation as well. And just make sure that all this stuff that is really valuable, that it's not a secret. I mean, it's important. I hope that every member knows, whether they sail or not, that we've got 2 boats that they have access to, you know. And so all of this comes together. Appreciate you taking the time, and
Yeah.
you know, you got a race tomorrow. You're probably, you know, gonna
Gotta
go home,
go
get
back
to
down to-
bed early, you know, and do all those things a good sailor does.
I'm looking forward to it. The Corinthian midwinters are a lot of fun.
It's the kickoff for the season, isn't it? I mean, I think
It
for the
is.
Bay Area.
It is. We're not that far away from daylight savings time.
Right.
And with it, you mentioned our club boats, and one thing is like what we're going to do to help promote that is we have what I call them the Wednesday night sprint series. Okay, and we do short course sprints right here in the cove, and we just go to dark. We meet about 5 o'clock or 5:30, and it's very informal. But the whole idea is to, well, have a good time, first of all. But we pick Wednesday nights because it's a big meeting night. Often, you know, a lot of our club meetings are on Wednesday nights. The place is packed. And, you know, they're going, what are they doing? You know?
Right. Because you
And,
see them out there.
Well,
Yeah.
those are the club
Yeah.
boats.
We need to get that in the crier and any other, you know, things posted around the club so that
I
they
think
know
we're
about
getting
it.
better at doing